For the fast day for Taanis Esther, let's just go over some of the laws that we have associated in particular with this fast. Some of them apply to other fasts as well. But Taanis Esther perhaps one of the more lenient fasts that we have. It's not a fast that relates to the Churban, to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Rather, it's a fast that's actually part of Purim. It's as if this fast was needed in order for the Purim celebration to take place. Almost like as if we're saying, we fast so we can celebrate. So it's a totally different type of fast, and the fact that the fast is noted, that is what actually brought salvation. It's not a fast of mourning, unlike the other fasts that we generally have. So on Yud Gimel Adar, and the 13th of Adar, we have a fast. So if a person, Misha Yashin Shenas Keva Balel HaTainis, from taking from Kovei Tzalachas, if a person was sleeping on the night of the Tainis, so let's assume it's a Sunday night, right? Sunday night, let's say, is Erev the fast day. So if someone went to sleep, they're not allowed to get up in the morning to eat unless they had in mind. This is something that people don't realize when it comes to fast days, that if you want to eat on the morning before the fast day, in fact, you have to plan it out ahead of time. You can't just wake up and say, I'm doing this. Rather, you have to plan it out ahead of time, and that plan out usually means with your mouth, but even if you didn't, if you just simply thought, oh yeah, I'm going to wake up early before the fast day so I can eat, then that would be enough considered to be planning. So if you didn't know that you had to plan, then technically it's okay as well, but now you know that you actually have to plan, so it's too late for you on that. So now that we know that if we want to eat before the fast day, we actually have to plan ahead of time. That means planning ahead of time means as long as it's still daytime. Generally, we do it by mincha, but as long as it's still daytime, then you can say, "I plan to eat while it's still before the fast actually begins the next day." Those that are pregnant or those that just gave birth, they do not actually have to fast in Taanis Esther. We would assume that that's referring to someone who is further along within the pregnancy for that. Who does not actually have to fast? So we're going to go back to this idea of how you eat in the morning, but for now we're just going to go to this idea of who does not actually have to fast in Taanis Esther. You're wondering if your name is going to be called over here. So someone who's sick, who's patur from fasting, they're allowed to eat in a normal way, and they don't have to do what we usually do on like in Yom Kippur, where we eat less than the required amount, like a shot glass worth 1 ounce or less. Rather, they can eat normally, but we just tell the person they shouldn't have overly indulgent foods on this day, since it is actually a fast day. So someone who's a muber, someone who's pregnant, someone who's nursing, someone who's cholim hapaturim, which we'll see who that's going to be in a minute, someone who's a sick person who is patur. So those people, they don't have to minimize the food they're actually eating. They can eat in a normal, actual way. So what does it mean, someone who's actually sick? So let's just skip over a couple of pages on this to explain what this means, someone who's actually sick. So these cholim are usually a reference to someone who's just in a lot of pain. It's not like they're in a debilitating state, but someone who's technically in a lot of pain. So the Ramah writes on that who is considered a chola. So it says, this is the wording of the Ramah. So Taanis zu einu chova. This Taanis is not a bona fide obligation. Therefore, you can be lenient. Yesh lahakel bo leisat tzarach when necessary, such as muber somenekas, which we said is someone who's pregnant or someone who's nursing. O lechola shein bo sakana, someone who's sick but not deathly sick, just sick, such as afilu rak hove'enayim, someone whose eyes are hurting them. That if it's going to cause them a lot of pain by not eating, they shouldn't actually fast. So therefore you have a leniency over here. We're not talking about someone who's hungry, someone who's tired. We're talking about someone who's in pain for something of this sort. That's why this fast is perhaps the most lenient, and therefore there's leniencies. And if you are going to eat, then you can eat in a normal way, in a regular fashion. You don't have to eat smaller amounts. When it comes to brushing your teeth, like all fasts, generally we do not brush our teeth unless a person is really in a lot of pain. Not because everyone else is in a lot of pain that you didn't brush your teeth, but it's bothering you that you didn't brush your teeth. If a person is mitzvah in the fact that my mouth feels so terrible in that scenario, then we would allow a person to use a mouthwash, but they would lean over the sink and do everything forward so nothing would actually get swallowed. That's how you do it. Again, it's not because of the fact that other people can't handle your breath. It's because of the fact that you can't handle your mouth, in the state of being unbrushed or unfreshened. We mentioned before about this idea about eating before the fast. So number one, you're supposed to have this tonight. You're supposed to make a stipulation that you're planning on getting up early to eat. But here's the part that people don't know. They look in the calendar, they say, okay, here's the fast day starting, let's say, for example, 5 o'clock in the morning. So what I'll do is I'll get up at 10 to 5 and then I'm going to eat. What you need to know for that is if you're planning to do that, there's a certain amount you're actually allowed to eat when it's right before the fast. So what does that mean? It means before the fast actually begins for a person, within 30 minutes prior to Alos HaShachar, 30 minutes before the fast actually begins, you cannot eat more than a kabetza, than an egg-sized volume of bread, of pasava b'kislin, of bread-like products, cookies, pretzels, whatever, within that first half hour of Alos HaShachar, of daybreak, which is when the fast begins. So what does that mean? It means that if you really want to sit down to eat, you have a nice big Danish, you're excited to eat that Danish, you're going to have to start that a half hour before that. So, half hour before the fast, you've got to back up the clock a little bit. As long as you backed up the clock a couple of moments before that half hour, that means you've begun your eating ahead of time. Then you have to start that. That's how you can start, and then you'd be able to eat continuously through. But if you didn't actually do that, and in fact you woke up, let's say 29 minutes before the fast actually begins, you're not able to have more than a kabetza of bread products, bread-like cake products, in, let's say, your 3 to 9 minute time span. When it comes to eating, tasting things, drinking things, that you can do. That's not a problem. It's basically having a mazonos type food, which makes it more su'ud oriented. It's more like a meal, and therefore in those scenarios, you have to start that meal at least more than 30 minutes prior to the fast actually beginning. Otherwise, you could have a couple of cookies. It just can't be a kabetza volume worth. So if a kabetza is a little bit over, let's say, 2 kezayases, so you would look on your whatever, you'd have, let's say, 3 cookies, and that would be your kazayas, so you'd have a little bit more than that, 4, whatever it is, but you're not going to have a kabetza amount, unless you, of course, started that eating right before 30 minutes. So again, 32 minutes you started your meal, that would be fine. You would be able to do that prior to the beginning of the fast. We're going to stop here on this part over here. We'll continue on a little bit more about Taanis Esther.